Welcome to another episode of Theological Sidebars. Here we go. New article. I thought this was kind of an interesting one. I think you'll like this today. It is after setting a record for baptisms in California, pastor wants to baptize America, then the world. So I first saw this article and I thought, what on earth is this all about? But it's actually a pretty good article. So kind of long story short, there is this guy right here. He is a pastor of Oceans Church in Irvine, California. And this comes on the heels of really about what took place on Pentecost. Pentecost Sunday, there were 12,000 people baptized all across California. And so they called that Baptize California. But it originally started, he said, he founded his church 5 years ago, started praying about this, and felt like what they needed to do was really build up Pentecost as a day to get churches involved, to really place an emphasis on baptism. So last year they had an event called Baptize Southern California, and they said 4,200 people were baptized. This year they did it, and they used Huntington Beach as kind of the anchor site, and then throughout the rest of California. And they said 6,000 baptized at Huntington Beach, and 6,000 baptized in the rest of the state. And so that's kind of what it's at. So he goes on to say, ultimately our desire is to make the day of Pentecost the day that Christendom celebrates water baptism. I think it kind of happens organically every once in a while. But the book of Acts was obviously started with a prayer meeting that led to bold preaching in the public square that led to a public declaration that 3,000 believed, and then immediately 3,000 were baptized. So this is something, by the way, as you kind of read the story, it's not his church that's found all these people to baptize. It's him partnering all these different churches that came together. So for instance, it says right here, it wasn't just a denomination. It wasn't just one part of the body of Christ. We had the largest Baptist churches in the states, like Sandals. So Sandals was the big SBC one that was really close to where I went to college there. And a lot of other Baptist churches. They had some of the largest evangelical churches, Pentecostal churches, even at the Presbyterian Calvary Chapel Vineyard. What? Oh, okay. Doesn't sound like this is the right church. As I'm reading this, if that's a name of a church, which I doubt it is, even at the Presbyterian Calvary Chapel Vineyard, those are different groups all move into one. I wonder if that's a misquote. Anyways, sorry, I keep moving on. I just read that and it struck me. But they wanted to see this kind of interdenominational movement, or what is it called? I don't know if it's a above denominational movement, an ecumenical movement amongst Christians, right? Now, here's the thing. I read this and I think, okay, cool. How is this any different than, doing a big evangelism event, tons of people come forward that, they also say, we didn't just do this to have numbers, right? So he goes on to say, he says, the movement doesn't just baptize people with no follow-up. Each person's baptized at events hosted by Baptize California. They'll be provided with resources from an online database to help them connect with a local church of their choice. This isn't like a parachurch organization that's going to kind of blow in and blow out or get a crowd or just trying to get them hyped. Our heart is to unite the local church to work together to really reach our world and then build a kingdom by connecting all of these people that are making decisions to get connected to the local church. For us, the win isn't the count of how many got baptized. Really, it's going to be how that translates to how are we going to get people connected to the local church. So I thought that was an interesting little article. 12,000 people getting baptized all across the state of California. And if, the desire is there to see these people have follow-up, these people get connected. Now, I will say that, I have some thoughts on that, as I'm just kind of spitballing here, of just, I like the idea of Pentecost kind of being a day that you save baptism. I know a lot of places do that, some places, for instance, we have some Orthodox friends. I think Easter is a day, at least for them, when they became Orthodox, that was the day that kind of they were presented and baptized was that Easter Sunday. So I get that. that is, you say that I have no problem saving that day. Really, I think I guess my one issue with this big baptism thing is, and if it's multiple churches that are involved, my hope would be, though, that like, okay, so why are you getting baptized? And what does that look like? Not so much on the follow-up, but I think on the front, what you say, like the meet up prior to that, right? I think that's a big thing to ask, is what kind of questions are being asked ahead of time. And, like, and I by the way, so just to give you a little context, so for us to get baptized, I do think that there should be a conversation. Like, I'm not one for spontaneous baptisms. Quite frankly, I would like to just have a little bit of a conversation prior to you coming down. I think it would be important to just kind of, to kind of know where you're at and why you're getting. Because I've had conversations with people before that they may not be there totally, and so you want to kind of verify that they know why they're coming down and what it's for and what they understand baptism to be. And so I hope that's taking place there as well. But on the other side, granted, I've baptized people before where, like one guy in particular, I baptized him one time and never saw him again after that. And he stole my Bible commentary too, never gave that one back, right? And so, I verified some of that stuff up front. So, but generally speaking, I like to have a conversation, talk to you about what does it mean to be baptized and why should you? Not that I want to put the brakes on it, but sort of make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. Now, I thought this was really interesting because kind of around the same time that we were seeing stories like this, I found this really interesting post that was shared. And let me show you what it says. This is from Darren Carlson from Training Leaders International. So a good buddy of mine actually works for Training Leaders International. But notice this. He says, this is a baptism questionnaire from a church in South Asia. Are you willing to leave your home and lose the blessing of your father? Are you willing to lose your job? Are you willing to go to the village and those who persecute you, forgive them and share the love of Christ with them? Are you willing to give an offering to the Lord? Are you willing to be beaten rather than deny your faith? Are you willing to go to prison? Are you willing to die for Jesus? And then people were asking, about that. And he says this is actually from a local church where he knows the local church and the pastor on the ground where that came from. And you just think about like how different it is in that context to do the baptism, right? Because largely speaking here, to get baptized, there is nothing that... there's nothing that really, there's not a lot of skin in the game to do something like that. Again, it is for some people still, there are people, especially as I talk, some of the hardest ones sometimes are people who are coming from a different background where maybe they've been christened or sprinkled and they feel like there's a huge issue of, I don't want to change because I feel connected to my family and my traditions because I went through that and you kind of being seen if you go through a believer's baptism or immersion that somehow you're making a break with that. And I understand that. I still don't think that that's a reason to not. But these are people, especially in other countries of the world, like to go and get baptized. What it truly means. And I do think that, to go back and look at this is the kind of stuff ultimately, like I had a conversation with somebody recently talking about, what does it mean when Jesus says about those who essentially who proclaim him versus those who deny him, right? And I think a long time people have used it as like, hey, that's why you need to come walk down the aisle. And that's what it means. You need to make sure that you show your faith before people. And that's come on down. And I don't think that's what the altar call was. I don't think the altar call fulfills that. I think it truly is baptism. Is what does it mean that I'm joining the faith? What does it mean that I'm going to proclaim who Jesus is? And I'm going to bind my life to his. I'm going to take that on as a follower of his, right? That's what I think is that's the mark. I have marked myself now as a believer, no turning back. And so I think this is an important questionnaire. I think they seriously get it. Of what it should mean that I'm cutting off, that I truly am, that I am, my new identity is with him, and it matters. And so I think what kind of a good, I don't know, I just want to kind of bring up this today as we just kind of look at kind of two views of baptism. Not that the first one views baptism light, but just I think it's a great conversation to have about what do we believe about baptism. And should it be? Should there be some more to it than just simply coming? Like, do we recognize? And I do. Let me stop by saying this at the very end. I do believe that to get baptized should mean that, in a sense, it's we are saying we are taking the name of the Lord upon ourselves. And to get baptized and then to not walk in the faith, to not get plugged into a church, to no longer walk, that is, you're breaking the commandment of taking the name of the Lord in vain. You've taken his name upon you, and then you don't live for him. That's a serious thing. And so we should, I think, have some serious conversations prior to make sure people understand you don't want to take this lightly, right? But then again, at the other time, sometimes you feel like, people don't, come on, let's do this. Let's get it done. Let's move the ball forward. Let's make this happen. So, anyways, thought this was a little interesting discussion to look at these kind of two things going on with baptism. And let me know if you have any thoughts on that below. But hope this was helpful for you. Okay, talk to you guys later. Appreciate you listening in. Got some new stuff, maybe some little spicy coming up next week. Some SBC, interesting stuff with Andrew. But you'll have to wait for an OTXNT for next week. But thanks for listening today. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.